I'm John Buchanan, and in this video we're going to have a look at some of the headline features of the new Logic Pro 10.5 update. There's lots to look at, new ways of working from a workflow point of view, new plugins, a complete revamp of the sampler options. So let's start to have a look at some of these big new features right now. Perhaps the most significant update to Logic Pro 10.5 is the inclusion of live loops. This is a brand new way of working within Logic, the first time we've had a non-linear workflow. What that means is it's possible to load individual clips, whether they're audio files or MIDI regions, into scenes which are then triggered vertically. At the moment I'm triggering scene 11, which is playing everything within here, and you can see that as each file plays through, it's got a loop length which keeps cycling round. What this means is that I can build arrangements by experimenting, by moving from one scene to another, to begin to see what happens when I do this, for example. If I record or want to edit a clip of my own, I can double click on it. If it's a MIDI file, it will show me the notes that are playing. This is a bass line which is being triggered using the arpeggiator, whereas audio files will appear as you'd expect as well, showing you loop points and showing you what the content of an individual scene is. Each of these clips is triggered either using a MIDI instrument or using an audio file, and of course I can apply effects to them. I can set their volume balance, and I can generally put together an arrangement which nevertheless can then be triggered in a really interesting, intuitive way. Remix Effects is new as well. This works extremely nicely with live loops, allowing you to introduce a series of DJ-style effects to your track as it plays through. We've got two XY pads, other controllers here as well, and what happens when we click on Remix Effects is that we instantiate those effects and we can play them dynamically. So we can apply filter-style tricks, phase of flange or chorus style effects, and we can choose from a number of different approaches to effects manipulation in real time. And when we let go of an individual pad, the track plays as it was before. We've got a gator here to chop a track up, a bit crusher, and we can apply DJ style effects such as reversing and record stop effects. We can even produce scratch effects too. When you're ready, you can turn a live loop session into a more traditional linear Logic workflow. The two windows for this sit side by side, so we can open them both up simultaneously, and then what we can do is to record arm our live loops session. Then it's simply a question of pressing record within the main transport bar and transferring individual scenes into the linear workflow to the right-hand side. When I'm done with that, I can uncheck the recorder arm button, and I can also turn off live loops. And what I'm then in a position to do is to make sure that the regions within the main linear workflow are activated, meaning that I can now begin to build a new version of this or enhance what I've done in terms of my live recording from live loops directly in a traditional Logic workflow. DrumSynth is a brand new plugin which allows us to create tailored drum sounds for our tracks. This doesn't use samples, it's a drum synthesizer, and it allows us to create kick sounds, snares, percussion, hats and cymbal sounds, giving us a range of parameters specific to those instrument types. So I've selected the kick for now. And like old classic drum machines, what I can then do is to change tone, shape, decay speed, saturation amount, and generally blend any sound I like from these parameters that are available. So DrumSynth can be used as a plugin in its own right, but interestingly what it can also do is be used within Drum Machine Designer. Here I've programmed a pattern sequence for a basic Drum Machine Designer kit. I'd like this kick to have more weight. So I'm going to select the kick track, and what I'm going to do is to swap out within Drum Machine Designer itself the DrumSynth plugin. And what I'm going to do is to select a kick here instead. And what this immediately allows me to do is to shape my kick specifically to this track. Let's swap one of the snares as well. And if we open Drum Machine Designer, we'll see that these pads have been added. We're now using DrumSynth for these two sounds. So DrumSynth is going to be a really useful way of being able to add or enhance electronically made drum sounds into existing beat patterns. The EXS24 is gone to be replaced by not just one, but two new samplers. The first one of these is Quick Sampler, which allows you to work with just one audio file at a time, and it's extremely intuitive. Let's suppose we want to take a beat loop like this. We can just drag it into Quick Sampler, and I can either just sample it in an original way using the original tuning, loudness, looping, and length, or I can optimize it, which means that the sampler is going to go looking for some musically useful parameters on my behalf. Loop points, individual chop points, and so on and so forth. Let's go for this option and we'll see what happens. Firstly, the moment we drop it, you can see that Logic has analyzed this file and brought it in. I've got classic mode, which allows me to do what you'd expect, play back the sample at its original key, or quicker and higher and faster, or lower and slower. We've got one-shot mode, which will trigger the entire sample as one, but we've also got slice mode. Logic has gone through and automatically found transient points, and what's going to then do is to map each of those onto the next available sound. Now, if I want this sound to be one thing at the moment, you can see it's chopped it into two. What I can do is just simply click on that marker, double-click it, and now the whole kick is one sound. So now, I'm in a position to completely reprogram this beat if I want to. And again, we could just make sure that that snare is one sound. So having done that, I'm now in a position to make a recording. And I've got a new beat loop that I've created from this first one. Let's just quantize that for a second and see what else we can do within Quick Sampler. We've still got other features available to us, not just the actual sample itself, but we've got various synth parameters we can apply to this as well. Let's bring in the filter, which has now been borrowed in from Alchemy. We've got a range of different choices here. Let's go for something nice and big, and we could add some envelope to it as well. We've got a dedicated filter envelope here. And there's a pitch envelope too. We've also got an amp envelope over here. So what I could do would be to drop sustain level all the way down to 0 and control the way that this sound behaves using decay and release time as well. You can see we've even got controls over different types of envelope style. So we've got lots of ways that we can manipulate the sound. So that's Quick Sampler very quickly. And what we've also got here is the main new sampler. This is really the direct replacement for the EXS24. It's now called Sampler, and it looks like this. It's a modular way of working. We've got these different 5 modules here at the top, and we can click these on and off so that we're only looking at the bits of the interface that we want to. So if I want to see the synth, I can bring that up here, and this is going to allow me to control filters. In the main sampler, we have 2 of those rather than 1. And we've still got those main Alchemy options. Within the mod matrix, this is where we can take the modulators which exist within Sampler and apply those sort of across the board. So the modulators are here, and then we can pick our sources and our targets here. So this is where I would choose maybe an LFO or an envelope. I'd then pick a target for it, and then the amount. And the via control allows me to put something like, for instance, a mod wheel in between the source and the target, so that I can introduce maybe a control surface to look after my modulation routings for me and play those through in real time. Interestingly, we've got 5 envelopes and 5 LFOs to play with, an awful lot of choice here in terms of modulation options, and you can see as I click to add more of these, the interface expands to show me those modulators. Mapping is more intuitive, but broadly the same as it was within the EXS24. We've still got the opportunity to map in zones and groups as we had before, so that's nice. And we can go through and do editing, so it's a completely familiar workflow, and we have both forwards and backwards compatibility. But what's also new within this main sampler is the same sort of intuition that we saw in Quick Sampler. If I come into my main area here, I've got a trumpet sample, and if I bring this in to drag and drop it, what I have a chance to do again is to either use a more traditional chromatic style mapping, or I can use the optimized automatic mapping, including the option to create a single zone per individual note that's been recorded. This trumpet file, it has a series of individual recordings at different pitches, and if I select this option, Logic is going to analyze those per pitch and map them for me as it imports to the individual keys of its finding. So each zone is going to have been automatically mapped based on its pitch, and not only that, it should have created loop points for us as well. So automatic mapping there of the sounds directly. So within these 2 samplers, we've got a lot of workflow to work with and look at. And actually, the EXS24 was getting a little bit tired in terms of its capabilities. Sampler allows you to go much further, more like some of the sort of leading third-party samplers that have sort of taken over the market of late. We can do round robins here, multiple groups. We can set up much more intuitive workflows, but retain compatibility both forwards and backwards with the EXS24 as well. So 2 new samplers to play with as well. Also new in Logic 10.5 is the step sequencer. This can be used for both melodic and beat-based instruments. Let's see how it works. So here I've set up two instruments, one this analog pluck sound from RetroSynth and this one a drum machine from Drum Machine Designer. We're in live loops at the moment, and in order to create a step sequence pattern, I just need to control click here and create a pattern cell. And then what I've got is a step sequencer down here at the bottom, which is ready to play from the moment I trigger a scene. The moment that happens, you can begin to see that the individual lanes assigned to these notes will start to play. But what I want to do first is to choose, first of all, the scale that I want to work in, and also the key. So here I've chosen the key, and now we have a scale. And what I can then do is to start building a pattern. Each individual lane here can play forwards, as they all are at the moment, or backwards, forwards and backwards, or randomly. And what this does is to introduce variation on a per lane basis. But I can go further than just putting notes into the grid. What I can also do is to enhance my pattern with different parameters. Firstly, we could, for instance, change the velocity of individual notes to introduce some dynamic variation. What I could also do would be to create an octave offset for a couple of steps as well. Here, introducing the possibility of notes to jump up or down octaves. What I'm also going to do is introduce some note repeats. What these do is to split an individual note up into 2, 3, 4 or more individual smeary steps. But if I want a note to last longer, I can make it tie. Now let's create a pattern cell for Drum Machine Designer. What this does is to immediately allow me to create beat loops for a pattern instead. So this time, rather than working with pitched notes, I'm triggering sounds from individual keys, and you can see the names that are mapped to them. So what we can do very quickly is to build a beat loop to go alongside our synth sequence. If I drag across an entire row, I can create notes not by clicking one at a time, but simply by adding lots of notes one after another. And here are just the drums playing by themselves. The step sequencer also allows us to add lots of other parameters. In addition to the ones that we looked at before, we can actually create lanes of automation data, creating offsets for filter cutoff, pan positions, various other things as well. So the step sequencer is amazingly powerful and intuitive, and it's a great way of being able to build tracks in a slightly different way to the way that we've been able to do up until now in Logic Pro. So in this video, we've looked at live loops, the step sequencer, drum synth, remix effects, and the two new samplers which replace the EXS-24. The Logic Pro 10.5 update is a significant one, and it's full of great new ways to make music.